So this is an empowered patient and care partner introduction to healthcare and advanced care planning. Because my motto is an informed patient is an empowered patient. Who is empowered? Anybody who's able to speak up for themselves or somebody that they love, who has the education and the information behind them so that they can speak up assertively. And so I hope that this is the beginning of the four sessions that we're presenting here that will help you speak up for yourself should you ever need healthcare. All of the information tonight is on the website for free. There's a lot of information on the website that is actually not in the book. Navigating the BC healthcare system. There's a lot of information in the book that's not on the blogs. I've tried to make them as seamless as possible, but everything presented tonight is on for free under PatientPathways.ca, and then learn, and then healthcare advanced care planning. So this is what it'll look like when you go to PatientPathways.ca, and depending on how big your screen is, but you're going to learn. Or you can get everything in one place via ebook. It's anywhere from $9.99 to $12.99, depending on the major book website, and exclusively via print from me. There's a quick reason why I'm the only person who's selling the print book, is that my publisher did not want to take the financial risk of putting it into print. They said it was too expensive. And so I have received very generous donations from my community to put it into print, and it's now available you can find it buy the book on my website. That's the end of my spiel. So tonight we'll be using the term care partner. There's a difference between a care partner and a caregiver. They are quite different roles, though it can be the same person. When you are seriously ill, you may not need someone to provide you with physical care, but you will need someone walking by your side. I am going to ask my colleague Whitney to speak on that a little bit. In a little while, she's an expert on caregivers. So your care partner might be your spouse, an adult child, a relative, or a friend. So healthcare planning is for right now. It is your medical history, your present healthcare, and your future healthcare goals. So people put off advanced care planning, think that I will do it someday for when I'm old. But healthcare planning is so important right now. What is necessary if you land in an emergency room, if you're in a car accident, if you have a heart attack? What do your healthcare providers need to know about you right now? What is your healthcare history? What medications are you on? Will you want to have CPR or not? Those kinds of things are really important. Advanced care planning is for your future. Means thinking about your values and beliefs as they apply to your health, and then putting them into documents for a time when you are not able to make decisions for yourself. And this can happen to anybody at any age. So my daughter, when she was 27, had a traumatic brain injury. She needed anesthetic, she needed pain control, and she was not completely able to make her own decisions by herself. And so I did step into some of that role. We didn't have a representation agreement in place, and we have amended that now. So advanced care planning is for anybody of any age. And if you are here on behalf of somebody else, because you're going to be the care partner or the caregiver for somebody in the future, then think about yourself as well. So healthcare planning and advanced care planning are a continuum from birth until death. There's not a moment when you need to have this in place. I see way too many emergencies that are going on when people are trying to put this in place when they're already sick. So what is healthcare planning? It's thinking about and gathering your medical and surgical history. gathering and documenting your current health, medications, testing, and treatment, and planning ahead and finding support in reaching your health goals. So know your past and your present healthcare history. Your past is knowing what has happened to you in the past that is current and relatable to what you are going through now. Your primary care practitioner, now being called a PCP, because it's not only doctors, it's nurse practitioners, should be the hub for all your information. But they are too often leaving their practices with little or no notice. So gather the important information about yourself now. It can be very expensive to try and gather this information later. If your doctor suddenly leaves without notifying you, all of your information will be sent to a central repository where it will cost you at least $100 to get this information. Sometimes doctors, primary care practitioners, will charge you by the page. And so if you're in that kind of situation and you just don't know which way to turn, please do reach out by email and I'll give you some direction on what to do. But you don't need every note. What you're looking for is consultations and and imaging, blood work, and those kinds of things. And I'll talk, as I talked about last week, under navigating the BC healthcare system, you can please consider signing up for my eHealth, normally known as My Care Compass, and you can get all of your lab work there. Stay on top of your records and ask for copies of everything new coming in. So if you have gone for an MRI, sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to get that consultation. Make an appointment with your doctor or your nurse practitioner to go and see them in a couple weeks after that MRI, discuss it with them. And most of them are extremely happy to give you a copy of your results. Put those all in a binder. Try and keep them sorted by date or by subject matter or both. So I have one for myself. Every time I go for my mammogram, I stick that everything was fine in there. If I've gone for a knee x-ray or a CT scan of my poor arthritic knees, then I stick it in there. So anything that's important, I don't take it to all my appointments, but my daughter does know where all of those documents are. So if they're ever needed, ever relevant, she can find them. This is a good time to review your medications and ask what they're for. So when I was a nurse, the number of times that people came in and said, I'm on a little yellow water pill, and they didn't know that the name of it was Lasix or furosemide. So it's really important that you know what it is. If you can't remember, and sometimes we're on a lot of medications, as we get older, we lose track of what the names of things are. If you're not going to have a big document, I recommend that you have a little address or business size card in your wallet that's got what your medical conditions are and your medications on the back. So it's always available. Do your research from credible sources on your medical condition. I highly recommend BC HealthLink. They're an incredible resource. Do use Canadian health sites as much as possible. Try to avoid sites that have a lot of advertising, such as US sites like WebMD, those kinds of things. I put as many of those credible sources on the education blog and in my book on credible sources. And if you want to be taken seriously as an empowered patient, know your diagnoses and learn to say the name. So I'll give a couple of examples, and I don't know any of you, so I'm not being judgmental, but people will say, men will say, there's something wrong with my prostate. It's prostate, letters count in healthcare, or my creatinine is out of line, where it's creatinine. So just learn how to say the words properly and you'll be taken a lot more seriously. Know your medication names, what they're for, the dosages, and the times that you take them. Ultimately, as an empowered patient or care partner, consider it your responsibility to find and organize documents that might be relevant to your future. So it probably doesn't matter that you had a tonsillectomy when you were 4 years old, but it will matter if you had had some kind of metal put into your body, such as a hip or a hip replacement or any joint replacement, or a stent put into your heart or any other part of your body, because then you won't you, you will likely not be able to have an MRI. It would be very dangerous for you to have one. So write down, think about, is this relevant for my future healthcare? And if you have any questions about that, you can send me a quick email or certainly ask your primary care practitioner. So gather vital information. I've put together a free, downloadable, fillable, and printable form. It's called In Case of Emergency, that doubles as your health care planning document. So if you don't know what to put down, this is a really good template of everything that should be included. So it's under ICE form and it's free, it's downloadable, and incredibly useful. This is what the front page looks like, so that it will draw your any paramedics to this form and find out where it is. You're going to be putting forms on the fridge, or a note beside on the fridge where your documents can be found. And I'm going to go into that in more detail. Be your own medical assistant. Think about the last time you had vital appointments and when testing was recommended, and then follow up to get requisitions and referrals. So frequent examples are yearly physical and testing. Just write yourself a note for about a month ahead of time. So next March that you're going to go and see your doctor and get ECGs, stress tests, mammograms, colonoscopies, etc. So those are the big ones, especially things like colonoscopies and bone scans. They will say you're going to please come back in 2 years or 5 years from now. You are the person who's responsible for making sure that those get done. You are your only patient, whereas your doctor may have thousands of patients. So if you don't have an electronic calendar, put a little sticky note in, says bone scan June of 2026, put that in December of this year, and then just keep on transferring that forward with every calendar year, so that you remember. And remember to go and see your doctor at least 6 months ahead of the time that the referral is necessary, so that there's time for it to be processed. It can take 6 months to a year to get the next appointment. Sign up for blood work and medical imaging on My Care Compass. Well, I guess I got it backwards a couple of minutes ago. So it's My Care Compass, formerly known as My eHealth. Testing results are usually online, sometimes within 4 or 5 hours. And unless they're going to a provincial lab, they'll be up within 24 hours. Look for the results and book an appointment with your family practitioner for results that are flagged as abnormal or that you don't understand. For some, blood work being just a tiny bit out of range can be significant. For other, blood work sometimes it takes a lot for it to be of significant value. So don't panic when you see that something out of line, but do make an appointment with your doctor to review those kinds of results. So as far as your future health goes, think about your future health, your future body. If you're healthy, what goals can you set to stay that way? Ask for support from your primary care practitioner and community supports. A very important resource is call or visit HealthLink BC. They have got just about every diagnosis and every service that you can think of that's available in British Columbia. If you have mild to moderate chronic health conditions, what can you do to better control them? Again, going to HealthLink BC, giving them a phone call, asking to talk to a dietitian, asking to talk to one of their pharmacists can make a huge difference, especially for things like high blood pressure or diabetes. If you have a serious illness, what is the plan for the future? And what are your goals and preferences for future healthcare? Which brings us to the next section, advanced care planning. Advanced care planning, or as we affectionately know it in the healthcare world as ACP, is at the heart of being an empowered patient or care partner. As I said before, it is important for all adults of all ages and all levels of health. So if you have adult children in your life, and especially if they've got children of their own, it's so important that they do this kind of work. So advanced care planning is not one document. It is an umbrella of conversations and planning documents that allow you to plan ahead for serious illness, injury, advanced cognitive decline, and end of life. So think about your values and beliefs, and we're going to be going over that. Have conversations with your future decision makers and healthcare professionals. So if anything, of all the things that you come away with tonight, the number one thing to do is to have a courageous conversation with the people you love about what you would and would not want. If you are seriously or critically ill, especially if you are approaching end of life, which is a segue to next week. There are 2 workshops going on next week. On Tuesday, there will be Understanding Heroics, Resuscitation, and Levels of Care. And on Wednesday, there will be a detailed look at medical assistance in dying. So the 2 go together hand in glove, and that's why they're back to back next week. So today we're going to go through these 3 conversations in reverse order. We're going to talk about the documents first. Engaging in advanced care planning is voluntary and never mandatory, even if you feel pressured by healthcare providers in a time of crisis. However, if you don't discuss your wishes for future healthcare, these decisions might be made by your substitute decision makers and your physicians. So what are the documents? Advanced care planning includes a representation agreement, an enduring power of attorney for legal and financial, an advance directive or living will or a letter of wishes for medical care. Those are the 3 documents that you should have in your folder. And then where applicable, a no CPR order, medical orders for scope of treatment, which is a hospital-based physician order, and an expected death in the home form if it looks like you might die within the next few months, or if you want to die at home and you're approaching end of life. And we're going to talk about those very specifically, especially next week. So put copies of your advanced care planning documents on or beside your fridge, or a clear note on your fridge where they can be found. They aren't any good in a safety deposit box or a lawyer's office. Now, please note that I put copies of your advanced care planning documents go here. You can put your originals in with your other estate documents, your will, your power of attorney, but copies should go to the hospital. If you send your originals, you may never get them back. They will become a part of your chart. I have put a little note, discreet note on my fridge where my documents can be found, and they are on the back of my door because I live in an apartment with a metal door. So magnets sit there perfectly, and a paramedic would have to be blind to not see them as they're leaving. So now we're going to go to who are your substitute decision makers? Who are the people who may speak for you when you can't speak for yourself? So take a moment to consider, in times of stress and difficulty, who provides you with support and why. It doesn't necessarily need to be a relative. If you are unable to direct your own medical care, who would you want to make these decisions for you? Sometimes you don't want a specific relative to make those decisions for you. And if that's the case, then you really need to put an official document in place. So choosing who will speak for you is one of the most important steps in advanced care planning. Substitute decision maker, or SDM, is the universal term for the person who will make decisions for you if you're not able to speak for yourself. So think of that as a great big pie. That substitute decision maker is the entire pie. But then there are subcategories, and most often the healthcare system will look to find a temporary substitute decision maker, also known as a TSDM. It is a hierarchy of those who may be called to help you make decisions if you've legally not named your substitute decision maker. Your representative is your legal substitute decision maker. It is the term used in British Columbia when you have named who you want to speak for you on a legally enforceable representation agreement. I'm going to back up there for a second and say that I am greatly disturbed that Vancouver Coastal Health in particular is not teaching their people about representation agreements. And they are actively not encouraging their use. I've discovered this through many people over the last couple of years, and it seems to be becoming more of an issue. I will be addressing this, but in the meantime, I still want you to put this document in place, and I'm going to be talking about it at length. So in British Columbia, if you do not intentionally and legally name your substitute decision maker on a representation agreement, your substitute decision maker will be named as your temporary substitute decision maker under the Healthcare Consent and Facilities Act. If you are capable, the healthcare system is under no obligation to speak to or update the temporary substitute decision makers. Their focus is on the patient, period. So I thought about this, and I thought about when I was a nurse, and I do not recall that I ever called a patient's family to give them an update unless the patient's condition was deteriorating or if they had died. Often families don't know sometimes that their loved one is even in hospital. And so there's a part under the under the Healthcare Consent Act that the hospital is under no obligation to let anybody know for 21 days after the patient has lost capability. So it's really important that you name a representative. So temporary substitute decision maker hierarchy can get very messy. The spouse can be a common law relationship, and that makes sense, except when, as I've discovered in a lot of cases with older adults who get married later in life, and they've got adult children who would have expected to be in that role. So if you are going into a later in life marriage, you've got adult children, then please consider having a courageous conversation about who gets to speak for you and naming the most appropriate person in a representation agreement. Adult children are all equally ranked. I like to say that 3 is a crowd. 2 will agree and another one won't. Again, name the adult child who maybe is well-versed in the healthcare system or lives closest. Parents are equally ranked, which of course can be a really big problem if they're separated or divorced. Siblings are equally ranked, grandparents, grandchildren, and notice that a close personal friend is number 8 on the list, and that person might be the most appropriate person to speak for you. So let's discuss representation agreements, and then after that, we're going to take a short break for questions and answers. Begin to put them in the chat box if you have them. So representatives are care partners. They are fundamental members of your team. They are the deliverers of the history, values, and beliefs and preferences for future healthcare. They are the eyes, ears, and voice of the patient when they cannot speak for themselves. Representation agreements are powerful documents, but they are only as powerful as the conversations that go with them. If you're writing your representation agreement, also have courageous conversations about your preferences for care, because without that, your representative is flying blind about what you do and do not want. If you are the substitute decision maker or representative for somebody else, take the time to ask what is important to your loved one as they approach the end of life. Again, they are naming you as their representative. Then say, why did you pick me? And I need to know what you want. Should there come a time that I need to make those decisions for you? Having a representation agreement is the only way you can appoint someone to act on your behalf for your healthcare and personal care matters, such as where you will live, special dietary or clothing needs, and additional help with daily living should the need arrive. Your representative is concerned with all aspects of your future personal care and medical care. Representation agreements allow your representative to assist you while you are still capable. That's so incredibly important, because when we're sick, even when we can make our own decisions, we might not necessarily want to be able to make our own decisions. We need somebody who can go to the nursing station and stand there and wait for the most appropriate person to talk to us. And they need to act as you when you're incapable of making your own decisions. So choose your representative with thought. I will say that a lot of people say, I have somebody in mind, but I don't know if they would want to do this job for me. Go and ask them. The number of times people say, yes, I'd be honored to have that job is really quite remarkable. So go and have a conversation with them. Let them know what you found out tonight. Go to the website and download Who Will Speak for You representation agreements and give that to them so that they have some information about what the job entails. Your representative doesn't have to be a relative. It can be a neighbor or a friend. Main thing is to think of a representative as an administrative role rather than the person who will be providing you with comfort. Those can be quite different roles. So sometimes your spouse or your adult child may not be the most important, or it might not be the best for that role. They might want to be there to hold your hand and be your wife, your husband, your daughter, your son. Choose someone, if possible, who is willing to do the job, who can speak assertively, not be passive, not be aggressive, that you trust to carry out your healthcare wishes and can make tough decisions, sometimes life or death decisions. Your representative can live anywhere. Unlike a power of attorney, they can live anywhere in the world, but they must be available by phone and able to travel to be at your side. If you want your spouse to be your representative, and this is really important and important for you to talk to them about this. Are they in good physical and mental health? If you've got your spouse has health issues of their own, especially cognitive decline, they are likely not the best person to be on that role. And it's even more important that you have another representative who's named, because as you saw in that temporary substitute decision maker list, the spouse is number one. And if the healthcare system has talked to your husband or wife, they're not going to talk to your adult children. This job takes stamina. Sometimes it lasts for years. Will they be able to stay logical when there's an emotionally charged situation, such as, do you want to be resuscitated? Are we going to remove life support? Will they be able to make tough decisions, or will they just want to be your spouse holding your hand and providing you with comfort? Again, that's a massive role all by itself. So don't feel like you're cutting somebody out. And a representative is the hub of information. That does not mean that they are keepers of the information. They should be talking to all of your loved ones so that nobody's excluded. If you want your spouse to be your representative and they're getting older, consider having another person as co-representative. This requires a custom form. Contact NIDIS or a notary public or a state lawyer. So I'm able to help. My team are able to help with advanced care planning. documents, including representation agreements, but they are boilerplate documents, and we can only name a representative and an alternate. So if you want your, I've already repeated that one. So in the education articles, you will find templates for letters of wishes, giving your healthcare team clear instructions about the role of your representative. Feel free to cut and paste anything you want to use in your own advance directive letter of wishes. This is something that I offer as a service. My team and I are offering is advanced care planning. It's about 3 hours broken up over 2 or 3 weeks to help you get your advance directive or letter of wishes together. So you can do your representation agreement for free through nidus.ca. That is the document that we use, and there's a very specific reason for that. And then because they put the wording to assist while you are still capable and to take over when you're incapable. It's also very much more of a detailed form. There are problems with the form. It's got a lot of words, and we're eventually going to work on maybe putting together a different form in the future. For now, it's the best one we've got. The province of BC has a form. It is too simple, and it doesn't allow your representative to assist you while you are still capable. If you have financial means or have a situation that is complex, consider consulting with an experienced, and I cannot say that heavily enough, experienced notary public or estate lawyer. Ask them those questions before you meet with them. The number of estate lawyers and notaries who I've talked to who will put the document together but don't really understand its importance is quite astounding. So I do have recommendations of a couple of lawyers if you need one. If you are having an estate lawyer or notary public put together your documents, ask that your documents all be separate so that they can be easily updated. So a lot of lawyers will put a representation agreement and then a letter of wishes about what you would want in the future included in that document. They're hard to peel apart. So if your representative changes or your health changes, you have to go back to the lawyer and get entirely new documents done. These are meant to change over time as your health changes. So consider asking them specifically to have a representation agreement and a letter of wishes or an advance directive as a separate document. So before I close for questions on this portion, I just wanted to make a very important note about capability. It's probably the number one thing that as a healthcare navigator that I deal with almost daily. So under the law, you are presumed to be capable. You can continue to make decisions until you are incapable of making those decisions. But capability is very tricky and very far from black and white. The healthcare system will do everything in their power to a fault to get your consent for treatments and procedures or withdrawal of treatment, and especially for discharge planning. They will ask questions like, Shirley, do you want to go home? And even though Shirley doesn't know how she's going to get her medications, where her meals are going to come from, whether her equipment will go through the door, Shirley, especially when she has moderate dementia, will say, yes, I want to go home, even though it's not the safest place for her to be. The healthcare system deems that advanced care planning documents are only to be enacted when you are clearly incapable due to serious or critical illness or injury, so you're on life support. You've just had a major anesthetic and you're really groggy. Your body is crashing, but most particularly for advanced cognitive decline, otherwise known as dementia. That can leave a great deal of ambiguity and interpretation. But with cognitive decline, capability more often resembles a roller coaster than a clear line. So when capability is in question, the representative has more power to advocate for appropriate treatment and testing than a temporary substitute decision maker does. So I'm just going to pause it here and stop sharing, and we'll just stop the recording for a minute. Are you seeing the big screen? Because I'm not seeing that come up.
We're seeing the big screen.
Oh,
We're
you
not now.
okay?
We
Just a
just
second.
lost you. It was on.
Okay. All right. Marvelous.
We can.
So the rest of this is going to move fairly quickly. I am not a notary public. I am not a lawyer. So I can't give any specific information about enduring power of attorney, except how it relates to the healthcare system. So many people, including those, especially those within the healthcare system, say, oh, you're the enduring power of attorney, you can make decisions for so-and-so. That is completely and utterly 100% incorrect. You can have an enduring power of attorney is one document for legal and financial. A representation agreement, you can name the same person, but they must be two forms. So do educate your healthcare team if they are incorrect about that. The reason that a lot of them are misinformed about that is because we are the only province in Canada that calls it an enduring power of attorney for financial and legal, and a representation agreement is for health. In a lot of other provinces, it'll be an enduring power of attorney for health and an enduring power of attorney for legal and financial. So, and then Alberta has just changed their wording so that enduring power of attorney for financial and legal is now called a representation agreement. What a mess. I wish that this was federal legislation, then we could get our act together on this, because it's very, very confusing for people. But within British Columbia, it's an enduring power of attorney for health. If you were in the hospital or residential care, it is vital to have an enduring power of attorney in place, and put that in place when you are capable before you become incapable. Bank accounts still need to be accessed, bills still need to be paid. And up until 5 days ago, it was completely appropriate for a adult child to be on a joint account with their parent, to make sure that this kind of transition was seamless without a power of attorney being in place. But now CRA has gotten their little fingers into it, and they're calling that a bare trust. So there's going to be a lot of movement, people not wanting to have the responsibility and the financial responsibility of having being on trust for a parent's accounts. So it's an enduring power of attorney it'll say power of attorney at the top, and either in the first or last paragraph, it says that this is in place while the adult is capable and while they are incapable. So it's enduring. Some adults have a problem with naming an adult child to be able to take over or be able to do anything financial while they are still capable. Again, that capability becomes very, very wishy-washy, especially as executive functioning begins to decline, and the paranoia might set in as well, so that sometimes the bills don't get paid, and that can be one of the first signs that dementia is increasing. So the enduring power of attorney will need to provide a notice of assessment in order to get pricing and income for subsidized home care or residential care, and they will need to provide authorization for private home care or residential care. So there's not a lot to be involved with the healthcare system. Please don't put your enduring power of attorney in with your fridge documents. The healthcare system will ask for them when they're needed. And Whitney, put that in your little bonnet for in a few minutes of when a social worker will be asking for these documents and what they'll be doing. So I'm going to skip the slide on taking a little break. I'm going to be zipping through the understanding resuscitation levels of care because we're going to be talking about this at length next Tuesday. But it's really important for you to join us next week because, especially if you have ever said, I never want to get like that. And what is your that? Especially if you have ever said, I don't want any heroics. And do you know what that means? If you don't want heroics, it's important to understand the options, get specific, have conversations, and get the appropriate documentation in place. So heroics is more than performing CPR. For many of us, our conversations with our loved ones is often restricted to, I don't want any heroics. And that really only applies in a critical care setting. It won't apply if you're in a long-term care setting and you are slowly fading away from cognitive decline. There's often a vague notion of not having CPR, being on a ventilator, or maybe being on dialysis or having tube feeding, and we're going to go into that at length next week. So I'm going to just say that this is what heroics looks like. This is an elderly gentleman with who's on a ventilator, who's got a tree of IVs going to keep him alive. And this is what we're going to be talking about. So your physicians and your healthcare team will not start these conversations. They are strongly discouraged from having them. And you are, as you can see, I've got over 500 people who are in my, who read my emails regularly, and there's less than 20 people who have shown up. And that is just a really big sign that the number of people who don't want to have these conversations. And when doctors do bring them up, it is people, they're often met with anger. So it's important that if you want to have this conversation, you're the one who starts it. I'm just going to briefly talk about a no CPR order. If you decide that you don't want heroics, this is the place to start. As most often, other life-sustaining measures come after a cardiac arrest. And while everyone's heart will eventually stop, it is usually not sudden and usually not unexpected. But having a no CPR or medical orders for scope of treatment, which we'll be going into, is essential if you're sure you don't want to have resuscitation. If you're admitted to a hospital, present your no CPR order and ask for a discussion with your most responsible provider. That's usually the doctor or the specialty who has admitted you, to discuss your preferences for being resuscitated. Briefly going to talk about medical orders for scope of treatment, and we'll be discussing this at length next week. Most is medical orders for scope of treatment, and in Providence Health, that's known as code status. These are medical orders for level of resuscitation and treatment in a hospital, residential care, palliative care, or hospice. So in the olden days, when I was a nurse, a doctor would come in and he would scribble across the page, DNR, do not resuscitate, sign the name, and leave. As nurses and the rest of the healthcare team, we didn't know. Does that mean that we stop treatment now? Or do we continue treatment up until the person's heart stops? So internationally, around the world, these are orders that have been put in place that give gradations. And these are conversations that are supposed to take place with the patient, especially when they are seriously ill, about what they would want to have done. I'm seeing this slowly creep in. I'm seeing this happen when people are going for day surgery, that they're asking whether advanced care planning documents are in place, whether they want to have these kinds of discussions. So it's starting to take place. It's been in place since 2017, but it's slowly creeping in to regular conversations. And doctors, family physicians, and nurse practitioners are now able to write these orders for in the community, and they substitute for a no CPR order. So too often, most is not discussed with the patient or substitute decision maker until a time of crisis, and a compassionate conversation is no longer a priority. This is what the form looks like, and I'm going to go into that much more at length next week. The expected death in the home form is affectionately known as an EDIF, and that is a easy form for the patient and for the family. It has a lot of implications for the primary care practitioner who is writing the orders. When this happens, you are considered palliative care. And it has a huge implication for who will show up should you die. So if you don't have this form in place, you need to call the paramedics. You must call the paramedics. It might be, if you say that the person has died, it may take a long time for them to get to you. Then they'll see that, yes, the adult has died, and they will call the police, and the police will call the coroner. So there are a lot of people that can take a lot of time. If you have this form in place, none of that needs to happen. You will have already picked out your funeral home, and the person's remains can go directly to the funeral home. The person can remain at home for a viewing. You can work with that with your funeral director ahead of time so that you can stay, and they will help support you in that. And we'll be going into that at length with Nio Davis of Koru Cremations, Burial, and Ceremony on I think it's the 26th of April, and that will be coming out. So if you're really interested in what can, the ceremony that can be done, and what happens to your body after you die, I strongly encourage you to attend that one.